What happens when a European trade bazooka, a flood of Chinese electric cars, and a tragic night in Hintonburg all hit the same week? Let's connect the dots. Quick Ottawa weather. High of -9 degrees Celsius, low of -13. No snow. We start at home. Ottawa's Hintonburg neighborhood is grieving after a deadly apartment fire in a 3-story building. A man in his 70s died after being rescued, and 19 people have been displaced. It's a tough blow in the heart of winter, and support services are mobilizing to help those residents find temporary housing. Across the province, fire and police incidents kept first responders busy. Toronto police are looking for a 42-year-old suspect after multiple blazes at the University of Toronto's St. George campus. In Strathroy, police say 4 youths were responsible for a November arson at a local brewery. And in North York, a man in his 20s is in critical condition after a shooting. For Ottawa, the focus remains on Hintonburg. If you're nearby and able, check with community associations and the Red Cross about donation needs for displaced residents. Nationally, the pocketbook picture is still cloudy. Canada's annual inflation ticked up to 2.4% in December, partly reflecting the end of a GST break and softer gas prices. Core inflation, what the Bank of Canada watches most closely, remains mere expectations. Businesses report cost pressures and subdued sentiment, even as some see sales improving. Consumers are still cautious. High prices are shaping spending plans and savings. And while job prospects look decent, confidence hasn't returned to pre-pandemic levels. That caution is the backdrop for political maneuvering now underway. On the federal NDP leadership front, Manitoba MP Leah Gazan has endorsed Avi Lewis, saying he could rebuild the party and tackle affordability and the climate crisis. Environmentalist David Suzuki also backs Lewis. But the field is diverse. Former Ontario MP Charlie Angus supports Alberta MP Heather McPherson, and union leader Rob Ashton has the United Steelworkers endorsement. In Ontario, the Liberal caucus has tapped John Fraser as interim leader, pending Executive Council confirmation, while the party irons out timelines and rules, with full details promised by February 9th. Leadership choices in both parties will be shaped by those economic concerns: cost of living, climate policy, and how Canada navigates the world's choppy trade currents. Speaking of which, Canada has made a dramatic move on electric vehicles from China. Prime Minister Mark Carney has reduced tariffs on Chinese EVs from 100% to 6.1%, allowing up to 49,000 vehicles a year into the Canadian market. The government frames it as a diversification and affordability play, supporting climate goals by giving consumers more low-cost options and opening the door to joint ventures that could build affordable EVs here at home. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is blasting the deal, warning of threats to the auto sector, job losses, and national security risks tied to Chinese technology, echoing past concerns about imported tech and data security. The U.S. reaction is described as neutral so far. It's worth noting the deal is part of a broader thaw. China is lowering tariffs on Canadian canola and other agricultural products. There's a 5-year BC-China memorandum on advancing modern wood construction, and Ottawa has secured the removal of China's 25% tariff on Canadian lobster by March 1st. Good news for harvesters and exporters who've been squeezed on price. For Ottawa and Canada, this is the tension of 2026. Climate pragmatism, industrial policy, and national security, all colliding. EVs are crucial to emissions targets, but they're also rolling computers with sophisticated software and connectivity. While Premier Ford's espionage warning is an allegation, it's clear policymakers will have to set strong standards on data, cybersecurity, and supply chains as these cars hit the market. The upside for consumers is more choice and potentially lower prices. The challenge is safeguarding jobs and tech sovereignty while accelerating the transition. Across the Atlantic, Europe is bracing for a confrontation with Washington that could spill over to Canada's interests. Swedish MEP Karen Karlsbro is urging the EU to respond forcefully to President Trump's threat of 10% tariffs on 8 countries, including EU members, linked to opposition to a U.S. push to control Greenland, the autonomous Danish territory. Denmark's prime minister has called the pressure blackmail, and Brussels is weighing retaliatory tariffs and its anti-coercion instrument, the so-called trade bazooka. That tool could restrict access to public tenders, investments, banking, and digital services. Why should Ottawa care? Because if transatlantic trade flares up, supply chains, prices, and allied cohesion are all at stake. Add in ongoing talk about sovereignty, from Canada's sensitivity to U.S. trade pressure to Greenland's status, and you get the sense that northern geopolitics is heating up even as our streets freeze. Some observers have even suggested Buckingham Palace is watching Canada's situation closely, given the shifting geopolitical landscape. Yet another reminder of how intertwined sovereignty questions have become. On the hardwood and the ice, the Toronto Maple Leafs saw their 7-game home win streak snapped by the Minnesota Wild, 6-3. Marcus Foligno recorded his first NHL hat trick. Vladimir Tarasenko added 2 goals and an assist, and Philip Gustafsson stopped 27 shots. Leafs goalie Joseph Woll gave up 5 on 29 before being relieved by Dennis Hildeby, and Toronto was without William Nylander, sidelined by a groin injury. It's a mid-season gut check for a team that had been flying at home. In the NBA, the Denver Nuggets beat the Charlotte Hornets on January 18th, with highlights showcasing clutch stretches from the defending champs. No Raptors game in this set, but Toronto fans have their own measuring stick matchups ahead as the trade deadline chatter builds. Looping back to the economy, combine that inflation print with cautious consumers and the new trade openings to China, and you can sketch the road ahead. If cheaper EVs and stronger export channels for BC lumber and Atlantic lobster gain traction, we could see modest relief on certain prices and a boost for key sectors. But any escalation in EU-US trade tensions or further tariff turbulence affecting Canada could offset those gains. For Ottawa households, it's likely to remain a budgeting year. Watch your variable costs, keep an eye on Bank of Canada signals, and expect policy debates on climate, industry, and security to stay front and center. Before we go, one more note on community. After the Hintonburg fire, if you're looking to help, local shelters and neighborhood associations often post immediate needs: gift cards, winter clothing, or short-term housing leads. Small gestures go a long way in a cold week. That's it for today. We'll keep tracking the EV deals rollout, EU-US trade moves, and the latest on Ottawa's recovery efforts in Hintonburg. Thanks for listening, and stay warm out there.